Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our guests from around the world, including Europe, Middle East, Southeast, and Northeast Asia, and of course, North America. Bonsoir, bonjour à toutes et à tous. Welcome to the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's launch of the Canadian Women's International Network, or CanWIN, which we hope will be a catchy enough acronym for all to remember. My name is Christine Nakamura, Vice President of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's Toronto office, Director of our Women's Trade Mission Series to Asia, and a founding member of CanWIN's Executive Advisory Group. I'm delighted to be your host and MC for tonight's event. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that while we are all meeting in a digital global space, the places Canadians call home are the traditional territories of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. We are broadcasting today from Toronto on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Before we go on, please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website after the event. As the agenda and speaker biographies were distributed to all guests in advance, speaker introductions will be very brief. Please post your questions in the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. Time permitting, we'll do the best we can to respond to as many as we can. For technical support, please contact events@asiapacific.ca. I'd like to start with a bit of background which led to the creation of CanWIN. After the Canadian government delivered its first gender-sensitive budget in 2017, we began to focus on how a gender-based economic growth strategy involving the Asia-Pacific region could support Canada's efforts to grow the economy. In early 2018, we launched a year-long dialogue series involving 8 roundtables across Canada with over 300 women leaders in business, government, and academia, and women entrepreneurs, of course, to determine the challenges and opportunities for women-led SMEs, or small and medium-sized enterprises. We learned from our entrepreneurs that most of them were not exporting to or engaging international markets, especially those in Asia. In Canada, only 16% of SMEs are majority women-owned, and only a fraction of these attempt to find or are able to find growth opportunities for companies abroad. The main reason for this was due to hesitancy on their part to take risks in unfamiliar and culturally diverse markets, such as those in Asia, where the way of doing business is significantly different from the way they are accustomed. Entrepreneurs are all expressed an interest in accessing markets in Asia, but indicated that they couldn't and wouldn't try on their own. They indicated that an introduction to these markets through trade missions dedicated to women entrepreneurs and organized by a non-governmental organization with experience and cultural know-how about navigating in these economies would be most welcome. So in response to their request, we launched the Canadian Women's Business Missions to Asia series in April 2019 with a pilot trade mission to Japan. We have since successfully organized 2 more women's trade missions, albeit in a virtual and virtual hybrid model, to South Korea in 2020 and Taiwan in 2021 due to international travel restrictions. So why CanWIN? Organizing international trade missions to Asia requires a great deal of effort in relationship building to find willing partners and collaborators, both domestically and in market. Given the effort invested over the past few years to nurture these relationships and the potential business and economic benefits that accrue from a dedicated and active Canada-Asia women-focused business ecosystem, our team felt that it would be a shame not to interconnect the various networks that we had developed. As a result, we decided to create an evergreen network that we could continue to expand to benefit mission delegates, both former and future, and other interested women entrepreneurs and futurepreneurs. What exactly is CanWIN? CanWIN is an international ecosystem of women supporting Canadian women in business, offering a powerful network of connections, ongoing advocacy, and support. CanWIN will celebrate accomplishments of women in business, advance economic gender equality, and empowerment for Canadian women through global trade promotion, and facilitate business growth of women-led SMEs through engagement in Asia's growth markets. Our team aims to develop this important and much-needed network in tandem with its organization of the Canadian Women's Business Missions to Asia series. I am delighted to announce that Dr. Lois Naherney, President and CEO of DNA Power, and a Director on Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's board, is CanWIN's inaugural chair, and Ms. Janice Fukuxa, Chancellor of Ryerson University, Chair of the National Coalition of Canadians Against Anti-Asian Racism, and former Chair of the Infrastructure Bank of Canada, is our Vice Chair. We are very fortunate to have these two very influential architects of change to lead this exciting initiative. CanWIN's membership will comprise women in business, and especially entrepreneurs from all sectors who will be the core of the ecosystem, and champions, both Canadians and Asians, who are willing and able to support Canadian women entrepreneurs looking to expand into Asian markets through mentorship, introductions, and/or other helpful resources. A champion is a form of designation for women leaders from our membership who are committed to helping women entrepreneurs and are defined as: 1, experienced professionals in domestic and international commerce, and if possible, with Asian business know-how. 2, experts in areas of business development who are willing to share their expertise. And 3, leaders who are able to connect member entrepreneurs to opportunities and resources that support business expansion into and within Asia. In addition to the powerful network, CanWIN offers exclusive access to specialized training and market intelligence, mentorship, as well as stimulating events and summits organized by CanWIN and the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. We invite Canadian women entrepreneurs, leading companies ranging in size from micro to small startup ventures to medium-sized enterprises, as well as aspiring entrepreneurs, and of course, prominent thought and business leaders who are passionate about helping women in business to join our network. The CanWIN webpage is now live under the Networks button on Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's homepage. We are currently building a platform on our website to house the CanWIN resources and membership directory. However, as the portal is still being developed, those interested in joining should register their interest by completing the form linked to our CanWIN webpage. We will contact registrants with next steps near the end of summer when construction of the portal is completed. The link to the CanWIN page is provided in the chat box to the right of the screen. Tonight, we have an exciting program showcasing successful women in business from Canada and Asia who will briefly share their journeys, insights, as well as their thoughts on the value of CanWIN for women entrepreneurs. So now it gives me great pleasure to call upon our inaugural chair, Dr. Lois Naherney, to make welcome remarks. Lois, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Christine, and welcome to everyone. What a phenomenal audience of women entrepreneurs and supporters from around the world. So I am delighted and honored to be the inaugural chair of the Canadian Women's International Network, or CanWIN. And thanks to Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada for initiating this exciting new venture. As a woman in business, I spent much of my career as the only woman in the boardroom. I did many of my jobs involved working in Asia. It was difficult at times. And I adopted children from Asia, so I have a real passion for that area. Now, as a women entrepreneur, I know that the power of supporting women entrepreneurs beyond our networks and beyond our borders can bring just tremendous results. And I'd say in this time, it's never been more important. Women entrepreneurs around the world have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And I know many were forced to shut down their businesses in order to homeschool their children, to look after families, or became insolvent due to economic shutdowns and changes in the supply and demand. As a biotech entrepreneur, I know my business was dramatically impacted by shutdowns. I had to increase debt to finance the business and keep my team employed, and had to manage my 2 teenage kids in and out of school during the time. I know so many of us are wanting to be able to grow and to really get our businesses out there, and now is the time to create new opportunities to support the amazing women entrepreneurs who play such a vital role in our economy. So CanWIN aims to do just that. It's going to create a dynamic network and ecosystem to connect Canadian women entrepreneurs with domestic and international leaders in business, government, and academia to help expand their businesses beyond the Canadian borders into thriving markets in Asia and around the world. Our members are going to represent the diversity of Canadian women in business. They're coming from across Canada, work in all sectors of the economy, lead companies ranging in size from micro to small to medium, and include underrepresented sectors such as STEM. CanWIN will have influential executive thought leaders or champions, as Christine mentioned, who have diverse skills, networks, and contacts, and resources to help promote international trade for women entrepreneurs. And in addition to this powerful network, CanWIN members will have exciting opportunities to participate in women-only trade missions to Asia, led by the Asia Pacific Foundation. So to lead CanWIN, we have a dynamic group of leaders passionate about helping women scale their businesses in Asia. And together with Janice Fukakusa, my CanWIN Vice Chair, I'd like to introduce our Executive Advisory Council. Elisa Chu from Taiwan, Dr. Ellison from Canada, Dr. Song-Yi Yoon from South Korea, Christine Nakamura from Canada, Yukako Uchinaga from Japan. Together with these women, I'm delighted to be working with them as we develop and implement strategies for growing our women-led businesses. You're going to meet most of them tonight, and I invite you to read their bios to learn more about their celebrated careers. As the economy slowly begins to reopen, CanWIN, with its positive and assertive title, will hopefully encourage entrepreneur members to reopen, rebuild, and grow their businesses in the post-pandemic era. CanWIN champions experienced in Asia commerce can help to focus thriving women SMEs to engage markets in Asia Pacific region, and many that have been less impacted by the pandemic slowdown and are on the rebound will be wonderful markets for people to grow. I strongly believe CanWIN will play a valuable role in Canada's post-pandemic efforts and support a she-covery. Before closing, and on behalf of Janice and myself, I'd like to thank those who have supported the development and launch of CanWIN, the Asia Pacific Foundation, the Executive Advisory Group, and especially Christine and her team for the work they've done to help create this much-needed support network for our women in international business. An exciting program awaits you this evening, so please enjoy and thank you.
Thank you very much, Lois. Now I am delighted to call upon Ms. Sarah Wilshaw, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Trade Commissioner at Global Affairs Canada, to share a special message from the Honourable Mary Ng, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. Minister Ng has been a strong supporter of our women's trade missions and has participated in all 3 so far. Unfortunately, she had a scheduling conflict and is unable to join us in person tonight. So Sarah, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Christine. Hi, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. As Christine mentioned, I'm Canada's Chief Trade Commissioner, and I'm so proud to be leading a global network of highly dedicated trade professionals located in Canada and around the globe, part of Global Affairs Canada, and here to help you on your entrepreneurship journey abroad. I sincerely want to thank my dear friend Christine and, of course, the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada for inviting me to join the launch of what I am absolutely certain will be a key tool from within the women's entrepreneurship ecosystem and help to build bridges between Canada and Asia for business women across the country. Most importantly, as Christine mentioned, I am here with you today on a mission. I have the honor and privilege tonight of representing the Honorable Mary Ng, Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade, who sincerely regrets that she's unable to join us tonight, but she asked me to share the following message with you. I would like to extend my sincerest congratulations to the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada on the launch of the Canadian Women's International Network, or CanWIN. Advancing women's economic empowerment is of the highest priority for our government, and your work in enabling Canadian women's success could not be more important as our nation heads into economic recovery from COVID-19. I am so pleased to hear that you are building on the success of the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada's women-only trade missions to Asia, most recently through virtual trade missions to South Korea and to Taiwan, by launching this new network, which will empower women here in Canada and abroad. Creating opportunities for women entrepreneurs to connect with one another is an important way for us to lift each other up, to improve women's access to trade opportunities, and to champion business growth on all levels and in every corner of the world. With the launch of APFC's CanWIN, I know that we are that much closer to achieving a more inclusive and more equitable future for all. And I wish you all the best as you move forward with this exciting initiative. And that is the message from the Minister. But with those words in mind, I want to thank once again the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada for this initiative. It is such a valuable platform, and I can't wait to listen and learn from the panel and the ensuing discussions. Thank you so much, Christine, once again. Merci.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And we hope to have your participation in CanWIN here on. So now it gives me great pleasure to ask Jan De Silva, President and CEO of Toronto Region Board of Trade, Canada's APEC Business Advisory Council representative, and member of APFC Canada's Asia Business Leaders Advisory Council, to take the mic. Jan will introduce the international panel and will moderate the discussion. Jan, over to you.
Christine, thanks so much for the introduction, and thank you for inviting me to take part in CanWIN's inaugural event. This is such a timely initiative because it jointly addresses two major drivers of our post-pandemic economic recovery: international trade and women in the workforce. On trade, our domestic Canadian market is simply too small and fractured to support a massive scaling up of business. Yet with a strong Canadian global brand, the more we're able to help businesses in Canada access new customers and markets globally, the healthier our rebound will be. Likewise, with so many women-led and owned businesses in our country, an economy without women's participation and leadership cripples any hope of long-term growth. Merging these issues makes so much sense. At the board's World Trade Center Toronto, we've run a number of women-only trade readiness programs. Our participants tell us about the boost in confidence and comfort they feel surrounded by other women with shared goals and shared experiences. Yet many still haven't taken their businesses global, feeling intimidated and lacking a network to connect them. Two obstacles that CanWIN will help dismantle through mentorship and relationship building. We're now going to meet a panel of amazing women who dedicated much of their careers to being those mentors and connectors. Before we get into questions, we'll hear from each of them about why they've joined CanWIN's Executive Advisory Group and what they hope to see this initiative accomplish. While they're speaking, feel free to put your questions in chat, and we'll be looking forward to some Q&A discussion with them following their remarks. First up is Elisa Chu, founder and CEO of Anchor Taiwan, operating at the intersection of tech innovation, cross-border collaboration, and Asian markets. Elisa works with top entrepreneurs, professionals, and creatives. She's also a mentor for the Founder Institute, a premier startup accelerator from Silicon Valley with 200 chapters around the world. Elisa, we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much, Jan. Hi, my name is Elisa Chu, and I'm the founder and CEO of Anchor Taiwan, also a very proud alumna of UBC and U of T. It is with tremendous honor and also absolute pleasure to be here with you, joining forces with my fellow Canadian women for the launch event of this very meaningful international network. I was born and raised in Taiwan, but lucky enough to spend an instrumental part of my life in Canada. And similar to many other Canadian Taiwanese or Taiwanese Canadian, I could very much relate to the open-mindedness, friendliness, and also believe in diversity, inclusion, and also freedom from these two incredible places that I could both call home. I started my career with TD Securities. Then JP Morgan relocated me from Toronto to Hong Kong, where I lived for 8 years before quitting my hedge fund job to go traveling around the world with a failed attempt to be a war-zone photojournalist. Then moved to Silicon Valley in 2014, fell in love with innovation, and the rest is history. I now work with corporates, startups, and tech communities with a huge passion to connect the world with Taiwan through entrepreneurship. Over the last decade, as a female entrepreneur and investor, I have been actively involved with many female-related organizations, such as 100 Women in Hedge Fund, Women in Tech, and Spark in San Francisco. I have been wondering for a long time, when will we have something like this for Canada to unite, empower, and take advantage of Canadian women overseas, as well as those in Canada? In a world where cross-border collaboration is key, I'm so glad to see that CanWIN finally was born. Did you know that Canada ranks consistently among the top 4 destinations for Taiwanese students to study abroad? It is also one of the most popular destinations for Taiwanese immigrants. What if we can convert those existing friendships, common values, and mutual understandings and turn them into powerful fuel and tools when it comes to overseas business expansion? And what if we can further explore the markets with each other and fully benefit from the collective potential and awesomeness, especially through a network of powerful Canadian women at home and also abroad? Well, for those of you who may not be very familiar with Taiwan, when it comes to women, we do have someone at the top. Our president, Ms. Tsai Ing-wen, she was re-elected in 2020 and currently serving her 2nd term. In addition, over 1/3 of our mayors and over 40% of our parliament members are women. In the world of small, medium-sized businesses, female owners account for 37% in Taiwan, higher than the global average. And I just heard previously 16% in Canada and around 19% in South Korea and 18% in South Asia. So you can imagine, as a female entrepreneur, you have already got a lot of powerful and also capable allies in this part of the world on my beautiful island. So with Anchor Taiwan's platform to harness ecosystem building and venture capital for cross-border collaboration, I have witnessed firsthand over and over again how women help each other succeed. In addition to empowering more women in tech and entrepreneurship, there's also something that's very close to my heart, which is to empower more women to be better investors. It is because while being at the table is important, it is not enough. We need women to be at both sides of the table. Especially for early stage ventures, what we see is that over and over again, because of pattern recognition, it's relatively challenging for female entrepreneurs to get fundings because most of the existing current investors are male. Because of this, we have started a Women in Venture network with now over 100 female investors, mostly based in Taiwan. And we're onto our 11th roundtable. And as far as I remember, we haven't hosted a Canadian speaker before. So I can't wait to explore the possibilities now that we have CanWIN. I'm extremely excited about connecting with many of you, hopefully not just online, but also in person. please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Take advantage of the online resources and events that Anchor Taiwan provided. And I can wait to meet many of you at either side of the Pacific Ocean. Thank you very much.
Elisa, thanks so much for sharing that information about the Women's Venture Network. Very interesting, and I think going to be very, very helpful with CanWIN. And thanks as well for reigniting the passion that exists in so many of our international students that fall in love with Canada when they're here and would love to play a role in helping bring Canadian business into their markets. Excellent positioning remarks for us, so thanks so much. Next, I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Ellison, the Vice President of Research at Baycrest Health Sciences, as well as Managing Director at the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. Ellison is the recipient of numerous awards for research, teaching, and leadership, and has a notable record in cognitive neuroscience and neurotechnology. She also has a long-standing dedication to advancing underrepresented groups in science, engineering, including women. Ellison, over to you.
Thanks, Jen. It's such a pleasure to be here. And although I wear a lot of hats, I'm speaking today in my capacity as Baycrest's Vice President Research and the Managing Director for the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation, or CABI, which is headquartered at Baycrest, but it serves all of Ontario, all of Canada, and indeed all of the world. And for folks who don't know what CABI is a one-of-a-kind solution accelerator that works to create a culture of innovation in seniors care, so that we can develop and validate and spread and scale the best innovations to help older people live their best possible lives, while also increasing the economic success of Canadian entrepreneurs. And although CABI wasn't designed as a woman-focused organization, because of the nature of our work and the models that we've created, we fund a much higher proportion of women-led companies than the 16% average for Canadian SMEs. So for example, in our latest funding round for established entrepreneurs, about half of the companies that we supported were women-led. And in our earliest stage support program, which is called Spark, over the past 6 years, nearly 90% of the projects that we funded have been led by women. And our approach is really just to show people that anyone can be an entrepreneur because good ideas can come from anywhere. And the people who spend day in and day out working with older adults are really those who are most likely to understand what's needed to improve seniors care. And those folks are quite often women or others from other underrepresented groups. So through all of those experiences working with emerging and established women entrepreneurs, we heard this same sorts of stories over and over again. And you'll hear some of these again tonight, probably, of the unique challenges that women face in establishing businesses and attracting funding, finding buyers at home, and expanding their markets overseas. So when Christine asked me to serve on CanWIN's executive advisory group, I just jumped at the chance because I have seen firsthand how the work that the Asia Pacific Foundation's done to bring women together and provide them with these sorts of networks within Canada and internationally can really enhance their businesses and fundamentally change their lives. And I've been fortunate enough to be connected to all three of the APF Canada-led women-owned business missions to Asia. The first one in person to Japan, and then virtually to Korea and Taiwan. And those missions did several things for CABI and for me personally. First, personally, I have to say that every single woman I've spoken to who took part in any one of those missions really feels like they have a giant new family now. And not a family that they were born into or a family of convenience, but a family that they choose to continue connecting with, and a family that provides tremendous support and insight and opportunities for growth. And even on the virtual missions, and sort of ironically, even perhaps more so on the virtual missions, the bonds that were created among the delegates were just incredibly strong. And when I had my B2B meetings, for example, with companies, I was looking not only for connections for CABI, but also for my delegate sisters. And they were all doing the same. And I still hear about new opportunities and collaborations from many of them. So of course, there were also tremendous benefits for CABI as well. And any benefits that CABI gets will end up supporting Canadian companies more broadly. So the missions provided, as you heard before, background training for delegates, and that training included both cultural training and market intelligence. And both of those were incredibly important because understanding, for example, the speed at which deals are done in different countries allows us to sort of create realistic game plans. that can help us develop and strengthen those relationships. And the mission also allowed us to show our commitment to potential partners in a way that an email or a phone call could never do. So for example, although CABI already had some preliminary discussions with some Japanese organizations, it was only when I was able to meet with them face to face for an extended period of time that they really saw our commitment to that relationship. And through that, we were able to form a true bond. And that's paid off in formal partnerships like the one that we now have with Sampo Digital Lab. Sampo has now co-sponsored summits and pitch competitions with us. We review and develop innovations together, and we serve as advisors for each other's entrepreneurs. And because we view this as a long-term relationship, there is tremendous opportunity for growth for our partnership that's going to end up benefiting entrepreneurs from both Canada and Japan even more. And then the connection to Sampo Digital Lab gave us the credibility that we needed to be able to develop connections with other Japanese companies, including Fuji Innovation. And it was also a springboard for conversations on other missions that we're still continuing in discussions with entrepreneurs that have unique solutions that could benefit Canadians, as well as with funders and distributors that could advance Canadian companies. And when I just think back on all the success that we've had in such a short time through our link with the women's missions to Asia, I get even more excited about the creation of CanWIN. We are taking here all of the accidental learning, all of the experiences, all of the connections, and putting them together in a focused and intentional way to amplify and accelerate the success for women in Canada and globally. And you know, I just always think when we act alone, we have very little strength, but together we have all the power in the world. And CanWIN is going to give us that power, and it will give us that success. So thank you so much to Christine and Janice and Lois for inviting me and everyone here on this journey. And I'm so excited to see the power and success that comes from women with the launch of CanWIN.
Ellison, thanks so much. I think you've done the best job I've ever heard of articulating the huge value add of participating in these missions, the connections you're making with our Canadian businesses here from Canada, but also the market learning and connections that are created there. And thank you and congratulations for all the amazing work that you do, which is so pertinent as well for women businesses, our ability to create a better quality of life for parents, for our aging communities, so critical to enabling us to continue to grow and develop, both as business communities, but also as women. So thank you for that. Also with us today is Dr. Jackie Steele, the founder and CEO of Enjoy Diversity and Innovation Consulting. For over 20 years, Jackie has been guiding grassroots organizations and policy leaders in creating solutions that place diversity, gender equality, and inclusive innovation at the heart of organizational culture. For 20 years, she's way ahead of the curve. She's a long-term resident of Japan, involved with the UN, Japan's Women's Network, and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Japan. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's such an honor to be here today, and I'm so excited about this new network and all that we can accomplish in the coming times. I think speaking from my place here in Japan and thinking about the opportunities that I have seen over the last even 20, 25 years and the shifts that we've seen, predominantly I've been tracking that as a political scientist working on diversity and gender equality in public policy, both in Japan and in Canada. And seeing the opportunities that where there has not been a lot of opportunity, frankly, to speak about, I think, gender equality and diversity in a meaningful sense, looking 20 years back, but in the last 10 years in Japan, things have really shifted. We've seen an openness, we've seen identifying of the intersections of declining birth rates with aging society, with gender equality, and with the pressures in terms of diverse talent mobilization that is increasingly hitting companies and changing the conversation towards a focus on how do we think about building diversity positive, or at least hospitable workplace cultures that can really allow Japan to be more competitive across Asia, but also globally. So in terms of my work and the reason why I pivoted out of academia and founded Enjoy Diversity and Innovation Consulting was really to think about how do we support corporations in Japan with change management. And also with executive education, because I believe very strongly that, you know, Canadian thought leadership on diversity mainstreaming, on gender equality mainstreaming into our institutions and our public policy and our actual corporate workplaces and as entrepreneurial networking workspaces, we do this really well. And I think that this is one of the things that I've been bringing certainly attention to, that Canadian models work. And I think that in Japan, what I've seen is there's a strong receptiveness to Canadian models of how we think about diversity and how we build out solidarity. So in terms of thinking through, another hat that I'm wearing is as the representative co-director and the incoming president of FEW Japan. And this is a professional women's networking organization that has been around for 40 years. Very active in supporting women of all professional backgrounds across all industries, entrepreneurial women. We've had a women's startup club that was very active in supporting women's entrepreneurship. One of the few really that worked bilingually sometimes and also predominantly in English, and diverse nationalities. So we're a safe space for global-minded women in Japan. And we've been networking Japanese women who are global minded and want a safe space where they feel normal and they feel they can thrive, but also the longtime immigrant women in Japan, myself and others who are here for the long haul and who want to be really building the fabric of Japan to be more diversity positive in terms of how we convey those cultures across. So FEW Japan, for Empowering Women Japan, is a bridge organization. And we work, with a lot of different organizations. We connect with the chambers of commerce from all the different organizations. And we bridge, again, so many Japanese women who are bilingual and global minded, and they go abroad and they work in many interesting spaces and come home. And often, rather than opt for, positions in corporations where they don't feel they can thrive, they start their own businesses. They feel that they're better off and have more autonomy, in fact, and leadership potential if they are their own bosses. So we're really enjoying that space of connecting all of these diverse women, Japanese women and immigrant women in Japan, to really have this sense of solidarity. And I think that that's one of the strengths that hopefully we can bring to the CanWIN network in bringing those women in as well. And I think if I think about the opportunity of entrepreneurialism in Japan, unfortunately, we're still at 120th ranking on the gender gap in Japan. We still can't seem to get past, 10% women in parliament. And there really is a lack of leadership and a lack of strong support by companies to bring women all the way up to the levels of high decision-making spaces in the economy. And what this means is that often taking positions in corporations is not the empowering choice. And I think entrepreneurialism is, in fact, a more interesting space, and that women can, in Japan in particular, if they can be their own bosses and create their own companies and leverage and have autonomy to set their schedules. We still have long working hours culture, long FaceTime hours, top-down hierarchical cultural attitudes in companies often that means that you don't have discretion over your schedule for, life integration to balance caregiving pressures. And maybe you don't even have a lot of space to be a leader within your organization and to show autonomy until you get senior enough up the ranks. So entrepreneurialism for Japanese women, I think, is honestly the next empowering space. And I think if CanWIN can be that exciting opportunity and network to offer safe space to really build feminist solidarity across women and a model of power sharing, women with women, women supporting women. I think that is such a tremendous, exciting opportunity. And the all women trade delegations that the Asia Pacific Foundation created under Christine's leadership, I think that is such an amazing, wonderful example of how business women can support business women, and we can network globally because we are so multilingual and bringing in these international perspectives and global mindedness about equality and about diversity as a positive strength. I think women really leverage that both as bosses, employers, but also as entrepreneurs. And so we can network that much more efficiently and effectively. Thinking how about we really, as I think, a group of women committed, bringing Canadian perspectives, but also wanting to scale and support businesses in Japan and having that connection. I really think that CanWIN, the network, will be able to share models of women's solidarity that I think in Japan, so many Japanese women I work with are craving those safe spaces of really women's deep practices of solidarity with each other. And certainly now in this very critical point in Japanese history and with competition, globalization really intensifying pressures, Japanese women are the most bilingual in the country. I mean, they have those language skills and global mindset. So bringing them in and helping those individual women and also these networks of women really move the Japanese economy forward, and also bring with that these diversity positive messagings is just an unprecedented opportunity for us to build forward. Thank you for your time.
Jackie, thanks so much. And your message clearly is the power that you feel CanWIN will offer for these women entrepreneurs in Japan. But let me tell you, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking how inspiring these women are going to be for many of our intimidated Canadian women who need to see some role models and how they carve out a different path to get to market and to create opportunities. So I see a huge win-win with CanWIN. Sorry, Christine, no groans, please. I really do see that. Thank you. Before we go to our final panelists, just a reminder, we'll be moving into Q&A right after this. So get your questions in chat. Our team at APF is tracking them, and I'll be receiving them by email. So lots of discussion still to come. And finally, I am so pleased to introduce Dr. Sunyi Yoon, President of NCSoft and CEO of NC West. Sunyi, you keep my son very entertained. She's an accomplished entrepreneur, innovator, and investor who is well versed in both technology and business. At NCSoft, she is one of the leading video game publishers, and she provides visionary leadership to more than 4,000 global employees. Sunyi, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jen. Good evening and good morning. I'm so thrilled that we're finally here together to kick off the CanWIN Network. I appreciate all the hard work and leadership that went into pulling this amazing program together. My name is Songyi Yoon, and I'm a president of NCSoft. We are a game development company specialized in MMORPG genre of games. MMORPG is short for massive multiplayer online role-playing games. Growing up in Korea, being a woman in STEM was not just a lonely existence, but one where I had to work harder than my male peers to stand out. I often was the only woman in the room who attended the science fairs and math competitions, and it was not much different after I graduated from schools and began my career in IT and technology industries. But I never doubted that businesses require more diverse backgrounds and perspectives to be able to navigate in this complex and competitive environment, something we need now more than ever. The world is an incredibly complex place that requires input and leadership from people with all shapes, skills, and dreams to make a meaningful progress for humankind. And as humans, it is our nature to trust and relate better with those who look like ourselves. So as a female executive, I was able to point out how many more male characters we have compared to female characters in the set of heroes and heroines in the video game world. Game designers and artists were making more and more muscular images as heroes in the virtual world, and did not even recognize their biases that were manifesting through graphics until they were pointed out. I think we need more females in decision-making positions. It's the quickest way that we can shape the world into a place where everyone can be their best and contribute toward the greater good. As a leader at my company, I was able to make our in-office childcare nursery run until 9 p.m. instead of 6 p.m. because I understand as a mother what it is like to have to run out of the office in order to pick up the children. The women at my company who would normally have to make a choice between leaving meetings with colleagues, networking events, or anything else that keeps us at the office and the care of their child now is able to do both. I believe we are on a journey where a lot more female leaders will be recognized and given opportunities to participate. And to do that, we need more allies. Allies and network create serendipity that can lead to connections and networks, which can also lead to opportunities. I hope CanWIN provides lots of these opportunities to all those who participate. And I hope all of you find friends, allies, and supporters through these meetings. Before and during the pandemic, Canada never lost its touch and emphasis on building the bridge across the Pacific and the rest of the world. And its practical and harmonious approach have been admirable. I'm so grateful for the support of the Canadian government, Christine and team, and wish everyone success. Thank you.
Sanyi, thank you so much for also reminding us of the multiple hats we need to wear as business leaders, as moms, and all the family responsibilities. And that doesn't change anywhere in the world. I congratulate you on all the success you're having with your business. I love the fact that your reference to the daycare staying open until 9 p.m. We need a lot of that as well here in Canada. So thank you for reminding us about that. At this point, we're going to move into discussion. So get your questions in through the chat. I've got some questions in front of me just to get things started. If I could invite all the panelists to turn on their cameras. First, let me go to, okay, Elisa, I'd like to start with you.
Sure.
You spoke about oops, sorry, one second here. You spoke about the types of incubators in Taiwan that might offer soft landing services for Canadian women entrepreneurs. Can you talk in a little bit more detail about what that looks like and what you see as the advantages for Canadian women businesses to scale in Taiwan?
Sure. I think, first of all, watch out for the upcoming mission organized by the foundation. I think, as Ellison has mentioned earlier, that's really one of the best resources that you could have got. And something related to that is that in Taipei, we have this Canada Trade Office. That's also a very good sort of like first stop for you to really get the connections, resources, and recommendations in terms of how to approach your soft landing here in Taiwan. And I think a lot of people might not have aware that CTA, the Canada Technology Accelerator, a really incredible initiative started, I think, 2 years ago. They do also have presence here in Taiwan as well. As Canadian, I think that's definitely something that you should take advantage of. And in addition to that, I think, like in Taiwan, in the entrepreneurship space, it's hugely subsidized and also influenced by the local and also central governments. So we have a lot of different programs offered by, say, for example, the Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Economic Affairs, or National Development Councils, and so on and so forth. So basically, I would also encourage you to look into some of them. So say, for example, TTA, Taiwan Tech Arena, Startup Terrace. And we also have a lot of basically non-governmental accelerator. The biggest and probably the one with the longest history is called AppWorks. They just celebrated their 10th year anniversary and basically now increasingly hosting more and more international founders. I would say to enter Taiwan, the first thing that you need to think about is, like at which stage are you at? Do you need accelerator type of support, or are you a more mature businesses already, basically looking to jump in to work more directly with Taiwanese corporates? Some of the reasons for a lot of international businesses to come here, and perhaps some of the successful Canadian businesses that I have witnessed that have landed in Taiwan before are usually related to, say, for example, manufacturing related businesses, because we do have a very powerful supply chain. So a lot of founders and entrepreneurs from around the world will come here to leverage on that with hardware manufacturing, looking for not just manufacturing partners, and also a lot of them actually turn out to be investors and also kind of like distribution partners, go-to-market partners, and so on and so forth, in not just just Taiwan, but also in this part of the world in Asia as well, given that a lot of businesses in Taiwan also have a presence in China, Southeast Asia, and so on and so forth. Another space that I'm seeing increasingly with more and more international players successfully landing in Taiwan is, like AI for more existing and more mature corporates. So especially, I know that Canada is really strong in this space. So not just for, like, say, for example, AI for manufacturing, but also, say, for example, fintech, other spaces. In Taiwan, we have a lot of very successful traditional industries. We call them hidden champions. Here in Taiwan, you probably have never heard of them, but like we might have power, like say for example, the screws in the spaceship, or we might actually kind of like manufacture tiny parts of your car. But like a lot of time you have never heard of their names, but then they're powerful. They have a lot of cash on their balance sheets, ready to really work and engage with startups. So I would encourage you to look into those space, basically not only in the high-tech ICT space with names that you might be more familiar with, obviously TSMC, Foxconn, Acer, ASUS, HTC, but also there's a huge area hidden somehow. But like if you are able to find the great connections and get into that space, there's tremendous opportunities around there.
Thanks, Elisa. And I can just echo that because as Christine mentioned off the top, I'm on the APAC Business Advisory Council representing Canada. I chair the digital working group for this group. And one of the pieces of work we're doing within the digital working group, led by the APAC Chinese Taipei delegate, is looking at a study that's going out across our incubators in Canada to try to identify health tech solutions that are looking to scale through Asia. So strong recognition that we've got incredible research and innovation coming out of this market, and we somehow need that help, and Taiwan would be an excellent place for that. So as I said, Lisa, that's coming out of Chinese Taipei. You also mentioned Ellison's discussion about those trade missions. So Ellison, we're going to throw this next question over to you. You mentioned signing deals with partners in Japan following the APF Canada-led business mission. And as you said, it's always that starting point of a relationship. Share more about how you've taken advantage of those touch points, those starting points, and what you've done since then to build those relationships and what they mean for the center.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. And if I can put in a plug for Taiwan first, we actually have a partner there, Quanta Computers, and I think a lot of people think laptops when they think Quanta, but they don't realize everything else that Quanta is doing. And to speak to Elisa's point, they're building all of these kinds of systems for health tech and so on with AI, and it's just, they're kind of in everything. And you know, outside of the relationship, you might not recognize that. So kudos for all of that work that's going on in Taiwan. I'll focus now a little bit more on Japan and say, just come straight out and say, I have been a Japanophile for almost my entire life. When I was growing up, our parents would allow us to pick one type of food for our birthday, and I always picked Japanese food. And I learned how to do raku pottery when I was in university by one of the fellows who brought raku over to the United States from Japan. I do the matcha ceremony. I just so into it. So I thought I knew everything about Japan because I had read about it and all of these things. But once you're there, it's a little bit different. It's not quite the same as eating sushi in Toronto or sipping your matcha latte at home. One of the things that was just really helpful was the training that we received in terms of the culture of doing business, because I had actually done some business in a sense in Japan before, because as an academic, I have students and I have colleagues there and we do research together, but that's really Americanized or Canadianized kinds of work because they're working on our terms and we've already worked together. And it's quite different from building business relationships. So, coming, from the United States originally, having moved to Canada in 1990, I was sort of brought up, you want to do things fast, you want to just get it done and, get the deals in. And that's not the pace. That's not the way that it works in Japan. So we were armed with this sort of information, and it changed the way that you're expecting things. It changed your expectations. It changed the way that you develop the relationships. And I think that the fact that we understood that difference was so appreciated by our Japanese counterparts, because they had seen so many other North Americans coming in and just trying to act like they were working with North Americans, that when we came in and we understood what the culture should be like in terms of building the relationship, it's not a one-night stand, it's a long-term relationship. When we understood that and we showed that, it built the sense of trust, and they saw that we were actually dedicated and committed to building that relationship. So that made a huge, huge difference for us. We've been having some conversations kind of like back and forth via email and phone calls with groups like Sampo Digital Lab. It wasn't really getting anywhere until I was sitting there face to face with these folks, and we were able to have a conversation and go back and forth and take our time and ask questions. And we knew that we weren't trying to get to something being signed that day. So there wasn't a feeling of we've got to rush through it. It was a feeling of understanding and building camaraderie. I think from there, we then continued that and actually had very positive feedback right away, that they wanted to head towards signing a deal, which was actually faster than we thought that we might get it. And we ended up meeting them in Washington, DC at another meeting, and then another meeting soon after in Toronto. And within probably a couple of months, we had signed that deal, which has now led to this continued relationship. And because Sampo Digital Labs is not just an innovation center, it actually is linked to this huge industry for insurance and also owning nursing homes, long-term care homes across Asia. It opens up so many doors if we maintain this relationship and we build the relationship for not just Cavi, but for all of the companies that we support in terms of distribution. And we're working to bring Japanese innovations into Canada that will help Canadians. So again, it's win-win for CanWIN. Jan, I love your new slogan for the CanWIN organization.
Ellison, thanks for that. Such an important message that the deal follows the trusted relationship, and it's about planting those seeds and having those discussions, and that's critical to any long-term deal. We're almost at the end of the panel. I've got one question that I want to direct to each of Sunyi and to Jackie, and it's the same question. And my question is, what is the best piece of business advice you've received from another woman at any point in your career? And I'll give you a bonus point if it pertains to trade or scaling up. Best piece of advice you've received from another woman. Sunyi, let's start with you.
Oh, that's very sudden that I cannot think of a good piece of advice that I received from another woman.
Well, Jackie, how about you? I'll give Sunyi a minute to think.
Well, I guess I think in terms of business advice, full stop, whether it's for scaling or not, certainly I think building trusted relationships and having networks who you feel have your back and who will support you through the long haul journey as a woman CEO or as a woman-led venture, I think is certainly pivotal to making sure that you feel supported as a woman business leader, and you can leverage all of the amazing synergies across that network because those people you enjoy such a long game vision of trust. And for me, certainly to echo Allison's point, certainly this is what I see as a very core Japanese way of doing business in terms of you commit to people for the long game. And I think that in Canada, I think the women's networking and this space within CanWIN can provide that safety net, if you will, and the long-term vision. And then that allows you to chart 2 years out, 5 years out, 15 years out, because you do have sort of a team. You do have a safe space and a safety net that's going to have your back. And I think that's pivotal.
Okay, well, Sunyi, how about any advice that you have for women?
No, I mean, I think that one piece of advice I kind of still stick in my head is just say what you think. And I think it came from the fact that you don't have to, I mean, you just kind of be able to ask difficult questions and be able to confront challenges rather than being able, I mean, think about how other people are going to feel and kind of soften it, because at the end of the day, we're just kind of doing business. And I think we have a tendency of just kind of trying to be more mindful and it often comes across as not being straightforward. So I think that was the advice that I kept with me, and just kind of say what you think, write what you say, and be more forthcoming.
Absolutely. Well, with that, this is all we have, all the time we have for this amazing panel. I want to thank Elisa, Ellison, Jackie, and Sunyi. Very inspirational, lots of thoughts going through my mind, and I'm sure it is for our audience as well. Thank you so much for signing on to the Executive Advisory for CanWIN. With that, I'd like to turn it back to Lois to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you all for joining us. And Lois, over to you.
Okay. I'm going to jump in here, Jan. I will be introducing Geeta. So thank you, Jan, and panelists, for sharing your insights and for the inspiring discussion that you just held. Now, I am honored to introduce to you our keynote speaker for tonight, Ms. Geeta Sankappanavar, founder and CEO of Akira Impact, a Calgary-based essential assets investment firm that invests in clean energy and infrastructure sectors to support UN Sustainable Development Goals. Geeta has followed a unique career path, challenging herself in sectors and industries where women are extremely underrepresented. But given where she is today, we know that she has succeeded in everything that she has set out to do. A real trailblazer and a role model for us to emulate. So with no further ado, Geeta, over to you.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you all. I am so honored to be with you incredible women here today. I'll start by just saying a few years ago, I was struck by a video I saw. It was a Pantene commercial that showed a guy and a girl going through their work day, perfectly dressed. And of course, you know, with Pantene, perfect hair. And then under the guy and the girl were labels that changed as they went through their different scenes in the commercial. In the scene showing them in leadership positions, the guy had boss under his picture. Under the girl, it was bossy. In a speaking scene, under the guy was persuasive, while under the girl was pushy. Under the scene of the guy working late was the word dedicated, and under the girl, as they flashed on a picture of her with her child, was the word selfish. I'll ask you all to think if you have been ever called bossy or have been called pushy or aggressive. I certainly have. Today, I'm going to share with you some anecdotes on the unconscious bias that is a barrier to women in leadership around the world, and that I'm sure many of you, if not all, have faced in some form yourselves. I'm then going to share with you a few key lessons that have worked for me in my life to thrive and overcome these barriers. You will know a lot more about me at the end of our time together, probably more than I'm comfortable with, but I hope that my story will resonate with you and you can find something in my experience that possibly benefits you or a friend or a daughter. As I think you heard from some of our previous panelists, let's start off by taking a quick look at the status of women in the workplace. Women make up approximately 20% of Fortune 500 executive officers and only 6% of Fortune 500 CEOs' jobs. That's about 30 women. The percentage of female directorships on boards of S&P 500 companies has actually increased. It's now about 28%. But the number drops to less than 6% when you look at women who are heads of state, presidents, prime ministers, or monarchs. And if we continue at our current rate of change, it will take us well over 100 years to reach gender parity. This means that our children and grandchildren could be battling the same challenges we face. This is why organizations like CanWIN are so important. You are engaging in dialogue and raising the collective conscience and needs of women in the workplace. Now, I'm sure you've all heard these statistics before, but what does this really mean? It means that overall, women are not represented where decisions are being made. Why is this important? What does this mean for you? What has this meant for me, for your career? It means that this affects how you are perceived and promoted, the importance of communication, how decisions are made, and how you connect and build relationships with the people around you. And for the next generation, how can you dream what you cannot see? If we don't see more women as leaders, CEOs, heads of state, as executives and entrepreneurs, we are statistically less likely to think that we can achieve that. The last piece of this equation is the part that we don't talk about. It's that everywhere in the world, no matter where we are, what our backgrounds are, no matter how different our societies may be, we do have stereotypes of men and women that are the same around the globe. There was a really interesting case study from Harvard Business School that I'd like to share with you. It was called Heidi Resin. For those of you who hadn't heard of it, Heidi was a successful entrepreneur who maintained an extensive personal and professional network that she leveraged to become a very successful investor. A Columbia Business School professor took her story and made a standard leadership business case out of it and gave it to two groups of students. The first group got the Heidi case. For the second group, the only thing that the professor did was change the name from Heidi to Howard and the pronoun from she to he. That's it. Every other word in the case study was exactly the same. Then both groups were surveyed. The good news is that both groups of students thought Heidi and Howard were equally competent at their jobs. The bad news, everybody liked Howard. He was a good guy, a great leader. Everybody wanted to work for him. Heidi, not so much. She was a little selfish, out for herself, not a good people manager, political, and the students were not so sure that they wanted to work for her. She felt like a loner to them. The only difference in the case provided to each group was the name and the pronoun. This was the first seminal study on unconscious bias that demonstrated that in our society, power and success are positively correlated with likability in men and are negatively correlated with likability in women. Let me repeat. Power and success are positively correlated with likability for men and are negatively correlated with likability for women. We have done a fantastic job of basically addressing intentional and overt negative bias in the workplace. What we are left with is this intrinsic unconscious bias that exists across industries, geographies, and cultures. And it is a complication of the world we women live and work and are leaders in. So why is this particular case study so relevant to women in leadership? It's because real leadership is about people not just following you because they have to, but rather because they want to and they believe in you. They follow you with passion and enthusiasm because you share the same goals and you inspire them. What is core to real leadership is our ability to build those internal ties, upwards, downwards, and laterally, to get the best from everyone, regardless of gender or background. And this is hampered by unconscious bias. These are the stereotypes we were raised with and live in without even realizing it. None of us are intending to do this on purpose. It is just what we were conditioned to do. This is important because even in setting the objective standards by which we hire people, judge performance, and promote people, there is subjectivity and unconscious negative bias by the people who are hiring us, judging our performance, and determining our career trajectory. This is a very difficult and uncomfortable topic to talk about. As one of the few women at MIT in my year, I never talked about often being the only woman in my classes. Well, other than how it could have positively affected my dating prospects. As the only woman in my graduating class to be hired by McKinsey out of undergrad, I was used to being the only woman in the team room at the client site, but it was just not something we discussed. It is only now, as a woman at the leadership table, at the boardroom table, that I'm comfortable talking about my journey. Why? Because if you speak about the challenges of being a woman in business or leadership, the person on the other side of the table from you could think that you are complaining or whining or asking for some special treatment, or they just may not know how to handle it. We are still a bit of a rarity. Frankly, it is hard for women to talk about because we are often too busy fitting in. After watching that Pantene commercial for the first time, I was struck by my own adoption of these labels. I have a niece and a nephew that I adore, and I am guilty of telling her to not be so bossy with her friends, to play nicely, while I would just smile at my nephew's antics and say, boys will be boys, or that's so cute, he's becoming a little man. If you had asked me at the beginning of my career, before watching that commercial or seeing the Harvard Heidi Resin case or reading Lean In, that I was biased, I would have denied it completely. I would have said it's not about the world we live in. That's the easy answer. Rather, it's about our performance in it as individuals. How hard am I willing to work for what I want? Today, with over 25 years more of work experience under my belt, I would say that this unconscious bias exists across the world, and it isn't creating an equal playing field. And we have to acknowledge it in order to understand what we need to do personally to counteract it. So what can we do? For me, I realize that there are a few key lessons that I have learned to rely on over my life. And I'm going to share them with you by telling you 3 stories. The first thing I want to share with you is the immense importance of building relationships and continuously expanding your personal and professional networks. Now, I have to confess, this is speaking with the benefit of hindsight. When I was starting out, I never had any formal standards of networking that I wanted to live by, and I probably should have read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and probably more than once. I moved to Calgary from New York because I fell in love with a Manitoban Icelander who happened to live here. And after dating long distance for 2.5 years, it was time to go out west and make an honest man of him. I left my job, my friends, my family, everything that was known and familiar to me to move to Calgary to make a new life. I knew one person in the whole city, frankly, in all of Western Canada, my husband. And as he wasn't in my field and was a relative newcomer to Calgary himself, he couldn't help connect me into the community, find a job, or make friends. So what did I do? I did 2 things. First, I started to do my homework. I began to learn about the city and its major industries, the companies, our leaders, about our energy sector, its strengths and challenges, about our community and the people in it. Simultaneously, I began to reach out to people. I emailed and cold called and introduced myself to everybody that I could think of. I didn't ask for a job. All I asked for was a cup of coffee to introduce myself as a new Calgarian and to learn about them, their business, and our city. What followed was amazing. Every person I met wanted to help. They each introduced me to 5 people who introduced me to 5 more. The acceptance and help I got just by asking for it was humbling. And this experience was my first insight into the values that Canada is built on. I elected to start a business with one of the people I had met. We raised and deployed over $1 billion in 4 years. We became the third largest energy investment firm in Canada, with investors from all over the globe. I connected into the Calgary community. I have made enduring friendships, and I'm passionate about committing my time and resources to bettering our city and our country. The lesson I want to share with you from this experience is the power of relationships in business and in life. I knew only one person when I moved to Calgary. I had no experience in our primary industry. I was brown and I was a woman, a minority in a less diverse city than I was used to. It was not easy, but I chose to take responsibility to create my own preferred future. I looked to connect with people by both sharing what I had to offer and by demonstrating a real interest in them, their business, and our city. It is human nature when meeting somebody new to probe for a minute or two to see if you have something superficially in common. If nothing is found, we mentally turn off. I am telling you that most people have something interesting to share, whether they know it or if you don't initially see it. But if you are willing to search for it, bonds can be created with the most unlikely people. It's how I met my business partner. He was a white Calgarian, 20 years older than me, and was a leading financier of our energy industry for over 3 decades. He's an avid, lifelong sportsman and sports fan, loves hockey, shooting, fishing, and golf. And me? I only saw my first hockey game when I came to Calgary. And golf? Let's just say I have never met a golf ball that I could connect with. And by that, I mean literally connect with it, as in hit it. Yet my business partner became one of my biggest supporters and connectors into the community. He was blind to gender, and together we found shared ambition, trust, and a desire to promote and build our energy industry, build a business together, and better our community. So takeaway number 1, regardless of whether you want to build a business, further your career, or just connect into a community, this principle is universal. Be intentional about reaching out and expanding your networks. Be open to building relationships with everybody, not just people you think you have something in common with. It won't be easy, but this is an amazing country with people that are willing to help if you just make the effort to reach out. You never know who you will meet or how they will enrich your life. My second life lesson is there is no replacement to the values of hard work, self-discipline, and sacrifice. There are no shortcuts. Hard work matters. I'd like to tell you about my father. He is from a small village in rural India. And when I say small and rural, I mean they still don't have a bathroom in the entire village to this day. As I was growing up, my father would tell me this story about how he was raised by his mother. Although she was illiterate herself, she understood the power of education to create opportunities where there were none. She would make him sit in front of her and study for hours while all of his friends were out playing. I would hear his stories about how he was so poor growing up that he couldn't afford the $3 entrance exam to engineering school, so he went into mathematics, which didn't have a fee. He got a scholarship for higher education tuition, but he didn't have any money for food. One of the other kids had a bursary for 2 meals a day. He shared that with my father so that they each had one. Throughout his life, he had choices to stop, to take an easier route. He never did that. He was unforgettable. His academic work ethic carried into his professional career. He was noticed and then helped by multiple people along his journey. He seized an opportunity to come to North America to build a better life. One of my most vivid memories as a child is in upstate New York. From our house, I could see the windows of my dad's office in the university faculty tower. Before I would go to bed, I would look out the window and see the light on and my dad working past 9 p.m. Sometimes if I woke up in the middle of the night, I would look out the window and see it on at 3 a.m. I knew he was working hard to get ahead, to be the best he could be, and to provide a better life for his family. Like his mother, education was the single most important thing for my father because it created options. It had successfully propelled him out of poverty. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the stories from the old days when your elders had to walk 15 miles to school, uphill, both ways. But my father's story is real. He was a first-generation immigrant to North America. He accomplished things that were against all odds. Yes, because he was intelligent, but primarily because he just worked harder than anyone else. This is the second lesson I want to share with you. You have to work twice as hard and be twice as good as anybody else. You have to be unforgettable. I am smart, but I am not always the smartest person in the room. My differentiator is that I would just work harder than anybody else. I learned to do and deliver more than what was expected, to go so above and beyond that I became indispensable to all who worked with me. This has been the biggest driver of my career. It is also the trait I often see in the most successful people I have worked with. My third and last life lesson that I will share with you today is that things can look different in the rearview mirror. They are not always what you think they are as you are experiencing them. This is a lesson on the value of embracing transformations and pivots in your road ahead, both personally and professionally. I'm going to share a very personal story with you. When I was in my junior year of university, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. I went through a year of treatment. I basically lived in the hospital for a year. I had multiple surgeries, aggressive inpatient chemo, radiation therapy, and then, due to complications, I had to have open heart surgery. I chose to end my treatment when the doctors told me they weren't even sure if the treatment would help. I was told I had a 75% probability of getting it again. Before the diagnosis, I had a life plan. I was going to be a neurosciences researcher. I had successfully completed the medical school entrance exam. I knew exactly what I was going to do with my professional career. Personally, I was a good, conservative Indian girl. I thought I was going to get an arranged marriage and have a family, but this health event, it changed everything. After my year living in the hospital, professionally, I had zero desire to be around the medical establishment, and I had no intention of waiting 20 years to see the impact of my research. I wanted to start living immediately. I wanted to have short-term impact because I wasn't sure if I would be around for the long term. I wanted to be in a fast-paced, high-octane work environment around people who could affect change in the world. Personally, I was damaged goods. That life that I had charted out wasn't going to be available to me. So what did I do? I adapted, I pivoted. I began learning about all of the other options that could be open to me. And I ended up orienting my degree to business. And I took a job at McKinsey & Company, a world-class management consulting firm that has been a springboard for my career. Today, I'm very happily married to a wonderful, gorgeous man that I would never have connected with otherwise. Although it did not seem like it at the time, looking in the rearview mirror, it is clear that this has been one of the most transformative experiences I have had. From it, I learned you need to be flexible and willing to pivot to different realities that can become just as fulfilling or even more so than your original plans. I'm sure you have all heard the quote attributed to Charles Darwin, "Only the strongest of the species will survive." It was actually Leon Megason who said, "It is not the strongest of the species that will survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change." 1 year after founding our investment firm, the energy equities markets collapsed with 2011, with the European debt crisis and a whole bunch of other things that were happening in the world. We could have panicked and shut down our business. Instead, we sacrificed, tightened our belts, and found another way to grow. We launched an alternative product platform that grew into a $900 million business. Although it was scary and difficult while it was happening, we persevered, pushed forward, and adapted. Now, looking through the rearview mirror, it was one of the best things that could have happened to us. 3 years ago, we did it again. I was deeply interested in renewable energy, and we made the first investment in renewable energy storage infrastructure. We acquired the option on a $2 billion, 500 megawatt pumped hydro storage facility with an associated transmission line. Again, it wasn't easy. The concept of renewable energy was an anathema. It hit at the heart of personal relevancy for my oil and gas partners. It caused a world of hurt for me personally to be the champion of this internally. But again, we persevered and we persisted. And then last year, I did it again. With the backdrop of COVID and its disproportionate impact on women, I wanted to do something to fight the systemic inequality that is real and does exist in our society. So we launched the ESG Bank, a way for us all to align our money and our actions with our values to create a more sustainable and radically inclusive world for all. It is so hard to have the courage to be aggressive or unreasonable or passionate about something new. But that is exactly what will make you a change agent. And that is the courage I know you all have that will make your teams better, your companies better, and your countries better. That's it for my stories. I'll bet that most of you have a lot more in common with me than you may know. I'm a woman in industries dominated by men, energy and financial services. I've had to overcome immense challenges personally and professionally to get to where I am today. And I'm a passionate advocate for continuous learning and professional development, and for women in leadership. The reason I started this conversation today by sharing with you the difficulty and barriers of unconscious bias against women in leadership globally is because I want you to be aware of the labels that are being placed on you. Acknowledge them and then figure out the right formula to overcome them in your specific situation. It is no secret, we're in a tough economy coming out of COVID, but these lessons I have been sharing with you hold true in good times and even more so in bad. Leadership will not come to you. It is something that you must pursue. You have to go make it happen. You have to show up. You are the one that will be successful if you do that. You may have heard the story about the little kid standing alone courtside while the big kids play basketball. When the ball goes out of bounds, he runs for it and passes it back in. And as time goes on, when an older kid has to go home for dinner, somebody yells, hey kid, to the little kid, want to play? That's the heart of it right there. If you want to play a game, you have to go to where it is played and find a way to get in. You have to be determined, be persistent, and when you get your shot, you have to be ready. And just by the virtue of the fact that you are taking the time from your busy day to be part of this webinar today, I know you are. But know that once you get that opportunity, you can't just pitch your pedigree or wait for someone to compliment you and offer you that shot. You have to pitch you. You have to sell all the skills and attributes and experiences that have brought you to this place. I have been very lucky to have had the support of so many amazing men and women throughout my professional career, some of whom are on this call today. And over the last number of years, an amazing thing has happened. Thanks to gatherings like this, that support has grown to include the amazing women I've met at events like this all across the world. They have become friends, professional sounding boards, and personal inspiration. a platform of support to help me raise my hand, ensure my voice was heard, and help me amplify the voices of other women around me. This has been an amazing journey for me. Leadership is exciting, fulfilling, and challenging, but it is not easy, and it is not for the faint of heart. Be really, really sure this is the life you want. But if you choose it, I wish you all the wonderful experiences that this journey has given me. So in summary, build networks, work hard, be flexible, and finally persevere. Be unwavering and unrelenting in your pursuit of self-improvement. In the words of Bradley Whitford, take action. Every story you've ever connected with, every leader you've ever admired, every puny little thing you've ever accomplished is the result of taking action. You have a choice. You can either be a passive victim of circumstance, or you can be the active hero of your own life. Believe in yourself. Be bold, be brazen. Canada needs you. The world needs you. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. What a beautiful story and so inspiring. A phenomenal way for us to be able to kick off our network and to get us thinking about very important messages. And I have to say, your first message is the one I just adore the most, which is, build powerful relationships and networks. And we heard that from so many of our speakers here today. And really, that is the essence of what we hope to be able to accomplish here at CanWIN. And so taking that message, we're encouraging everybody who's on this call, let's use the power of our networks. Let's use the power of women to be able to support each other. Let's really lever each other to be successful in our business, be successful in creating trade and markets and opportunities overseas. The world needs more women we already know women entrepreneurs work hard. So let's have you work hard. Let's support each other in the networks. Let's pursue our goals and use the opportunities. You talked about pitch you, be unforgettable, and remember that people want to help. Ask for help. And I think that's really what we want to try and nurture and support here. I love that you asked people for help. They showed up. You asked 5 people. They told 5. Let's all do that. Let's all support it. I really hope we'll all be able to work together and in the coming months and years as we grow this Canadian Women's International Network to support each other to be successful in business. And I look forward to future opportunities to connect with all of you again. So my thanks to you, Geeta, and thanks to everybody who's on this call. To you, Christine, to wrap up.
Thank you very much, Lois, and thank you very much again, Geeta. What an inspiring story. Well, this brings us to the end of our program. And if you found tonight's launch worthwhile, this is only the beginning if you join CanWIN. Tonight, due to time restrictions, we showcased only a handful of dynamic women champions who are willing and able to advocate, mentor, and support women entrepreneurs. Our team will recruit many, many others from across Canada and major economies in Asia to support and be a part of this network. CanWIN welcomes champions, women identified and non-binary entrepreneurs, startups, and futurepreneurs interested in Asian markets. So if you meet the criteria, please register your interest on the form linked to our CanWIN webpage. Before we close, I'd also like to mention that we will soon be announcing the next destination for our Women's Business Mission series to Asia. We encourage women identified and non-binary entrepreneurs interested in participating as delegates to keep a watchful eye for the announcement on our social media channels and website. Given the continuing COVID-19 health crisis, the next mission may again follow a virtual or hybrid model. In closing, on behalf of Lois, Janice, and all of us at the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada, I'd like to thank Minister Ng, Global Affairs Canada, and the Trade Commissioner Service, the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund, and the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario, without whose support CanWIN would not have been realized. Additionally, I would again like to give a huge shout out to our speakers for their stimulating presentations and discussions, And to our guests for joining and engaging us tonight, we look forward to seeing you next, again, at a CanWIN event targeted for the fall of 2021. Merci et bonsoir. Thank you very much.